What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the Play the Fight Song College Football Show. Another preview episode is upon us, and boy, oh boy, it is a beautiful time of the week for a little Maction. We are going to talk the entire MAC conference tonight, preview each team individually, give you our thoughts on the conference as a whole, including conference title, any bold predictions that we've got. Very similar to what we did last week with Conference USA. So if you haven't gotten a chance to check that one out, streaming live under our YouTube channel. Go to the Lives tab. The full episode is in there, as well as some clippets on the homepage. So check us out on YouTube. If you're not on that platform, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. We appreciate you being here, and it's always a fun time to talk college football. I'm joined alongside the crew. Jake is with me, and JP. We will all split up the teams evenly and cover this entire beautiful conference tonight. Gentlemen, how are we feeling? JP, you first.
Feeling good. Feeling great. Going to have a good weekend here ahead in Omaha, a little CWS action. Usually they're a week earlier. We're there the second weekend this year. Pumped about it. I tell you what, our first preview did well. I thought a lot of people enjoyed it. It was a ton of fun to interact with all the different accounts across social media. Cut a little flack here and there of small things. Hey, we're working our butts off. We're doing all we can. We're diving into the depths of things. We're going to miss a few things here or there. If one thing that misses turns you off, I don't know how you watch anything ever or any college football thing ever, because hitting 100% is tough, especially in the month of June here.
Yeah, I will say I will try and make a case for myself. I did catch like a lot of slack from Kennesaw State fans for my preview that was kind of bare because I think they're going to suck again. But they were like, hey, this sounds a lot like the Athlon preview. Well, you're damn right it was. Phil Steele's not out. Pick six not out. There's not a lot of Kennesaw State media outlets, so you get what you get. Well, not really. July 4th.
I thought he was
July
out.
4th it hits the stores. No, it doesn't hit until July 4th weekend, usually around the Omaha area, that is, and it's Barnes & Noble exclusive. So I think if you're a VIP, it's out, but that's like usually my go-to with all the rankings and stuff within that. Anyway, Jake, how you feeling tonight? You didn't catch a lot of slack last week, but ready to preview the MAC.
Trying to do my best. I'm excited to talk MAC, but am I on like dial-up internet right now? Do I at least sound okay? I feel like I'm moving at like.
You sound pretty much the same.
Okay.
Yeah, you sound fine. It's not. You're not moving. It's slow on our screen. It's got my Wi-Fi looks like it's struggling, but the picture looks good to me. So let us know in the comments if Jake looks like shit. I mean, it could be the
that wouldn't be out of the blue, would it?
That's not news. That's not news. Right.
Worse than normal. Like shit. Just call it another Thursday.
Yeah, worse than normal. All right, without further ado, let's go into the MAC, but let's start with our great presenting sponsor, No Rivals, shopnorivals.com. Use the code PTFS at checkout for free shipping on all of your premium collegiate hats for the upcoming season. Got a little vintage collection piece for the Red Raiders on a Texas Tech on this. Lower brim, really pitching that vintage style. So check them out today and use the code. If you use the code and the hat shows up to your house, post a picture, tag us in it. We'll do maybe something fun if you do that. So if you get a No Rivals cap, post a picture, tag us in it, tag No Rivals, we'll get you reposted. We appreciate you. Shop No Rivals today. All right, gents, let's go into it. Let's start with Jake, just like last week, roundtable style, to go Jake, JP, myself, and then we'll do conference predictions towards the end. We're already 7 minutes in. These usually run a little bit longer. And if you're catching us on replay, fast forward until you see your team's overlay on the bottom of the screen and make sure to hit that subscribe button. Let's start it off with Miami of Ohio. Jake is going to take us through the RedHawks this upcoming season.
Yeah, RedHawks, always a staple in the MAC, a team that consistently is fighting for a conference title year in and year out under Chuck Martin. I thought last year in 2024 was arguably one of his best coaching jobs that we've seen. And they started 0-3. You guys remember they lost at Northwestern, Cincinnati, and at Notre Dame. But then after that, they won 8 of their last 9. Obviously, kind of got pushed around that conference title, not the way they wanted to finish. But I think if you would have told anybody at the end of September, early October, this team was going to be in the MAC title in Detroit, I think Red Hawk fans would have taken it. So I think that they can capitalize off of it. One of the biggest reasons that they can capitalize off of it this year, I think if you have any sort of in with the MAC, or if you pay attention even a little bit, you know where I'm going first. Former MAC Offensive Player of the Year, my top number 1 quarterback in the G5, Daquan Finn, is back, and he's wearing a Red Hawk uniform this year, not a Toledo uniform. So that's going to be really, really interesting. I think he just got a weird shake at Baylor. I don't think it was anybody like Roberson kind of took over after he got banged up. I think it was in the Utah game, that second game of the year. And then Roberson just kind of took it from there. And he's obviously one of the best quarterbacks in college football. So it's not really even a slight to DeQuan Finn. So I'm super excited to see what he can do. And guys, I don't know, has it been 2 decades that we haven't seen a non-Gabbert be playing quarterback for Miami of Ohio? I think we're on the last.
That'd be close.
I got to double check. I'm pretty sure Blake Gabbert's the last one, but I mean, he was around the longest, playing since 2019. But that was a guy who really couldn't stay healthy for them. So hopefully Finn can play all 12, 13, 14 games. It can be really good for them. I think his ability to use his legs takes this offense to another level. I know that Gabbert was really, really good when he played for them. Obviously was taking him to conference titles as well. But I think Finn's ability to be a dual threat just adds another dimension to this offense that I think it's untapped. Who's he going to be throwing to? Not really sure. I think the Deion Colsey kid, the transfer from Notre Dame, who was there for 4 years, comes in, kind of his last hurrah, hopefully can put up some stats. I don't know if he's going to be like a second team, third team all-conference guy, but I still think he could be the number one option for this team that probably will rely more on the run just because of who's playing quarterback for them. And the defense is going to be really good on the back end. Silas Walters, Eli Blakely, these are two of the best safety tandems in the conference. Makes this pass defense really, really good. You can always rely on the defense with Chuck Martin, but it starts with the D-line, I think, that's going to take this team to another level, and it's defensive tackle Nazir Washington for me that I think can take this defense to being top 3 in the league. If he plays really well in the middle, I think they could be the best defense in the league. And they can be back in Detroit contending for another conference title. So I really think highly of Miami of Ohio this year. First 3 games of the schedule kind of doesn't do them any favors again this year. At Wisconsin, at Rutgers, UNLV. You get 2 Power 4 opponents, 2 Big Ten opponents in there on the road. And then I know a little bit of change of scenery for head coach and kind of roster-wise in UNLV, but I still think they're going to be they're not going to be any slouch for the Mountain West. So they have their work cut out for them. But I think this team could get 2 of 3 in there. I really do. I think they're good enough to maybe pull off an upset. They've done it before on the road at lower Big Ten teams. And UNLV, obviously, I think you can take care of at home. So if they start the season out 2-1, I think the sky's the limit.
They've got some exceptional QB play over the last few years, which have led to those conference titles and just good seasons overall. So you got to expect DeQuan Finn, if he can play to the caliber that he did the first time around in the MAC, you got to expect good things from Miami of Ohio. JP, your thoughts on the RedHawks?
Yeah, I think you got to find a way to get onto a heater after that first 3-game stretch, right? Like if you can win consecutive with Lindenwood, Northern, Akron, both Eastern and Western Michigan before you hit that next 3-game stretch, which is Ohio, Toledo, Buffalo, I think that does a lot for you, right? If you slip in the middle of that, it really feels like the MAC conference may slip from you, like a possibility of a 9-10 win season definitely goes out the window. So, I mean, find a way to get your feet under you immediately. And that's the story for a lot of these MAC teams, right? A couple of bye games to start the year. Got to get your feet under you before you jump right back into conference play.
How about the stretch at the end? At Ohio, Toledo, at Buffalo. I mean, those 4 teams, they're all the top 4 teams in this conference, I think. You get them all in a row. That's a tough stretch.
Yeah, well, we'll talk tough schedules when it comes to this conference. I think there's another one out there that we even had to preview last year that I get to cover tonight that will kind of open your eyes once again at some of the money-making moves that they are traveling out to these Power 4 schools. But Miami of Ohio definitely is a team to watch this year. Definitely has a possibility to go on the road week 1 and make some noise against a coach on the hot seat in Wisconsin. So good note there and a good preview by Jake. Let's move it down the line. Let's talk NIU. Obviously a massive story last year with Tom McCamick and the Huskies taking down Notre Dame in South Bend. Notre Dame then goes on to play in the national championship game. JP, tell us about this team headed into the 2025 season.
Yeah, you look at Northern Illinois, and if you're getting an outsider's perspective from outside the conference, you're going to get a lot of people talking about this is one of the better programs within the MAC. Traditionally, they win a lot of games. They had some of the best years. I'd say one of the best runs any MAC team's ever had in Jordan Lynch's time there. But it's a team that now deals with a lot of turnover. That's coaching-wise, and that's also personnel-wise. They're not far off the norm here in the MAC. This is a stat while doing research, I thought was pretty nuts. Throughout the entirety of the MAC, these teams are averaging returning 41.1% of returning production for the season to go. That's the whole MAC combined. That is 12% lower than any other conference. I mean, that's a crazy stat that tells you how a lot of these coaches are just dealing with the transfer portal and how hard it is to keep stars within the conference. Now, let's talk Northern Illinois. They got a win total of 6.5 right now, very juiced to the under. Thomas Hammock's kind of made this a program with a real identity. It's also a program that's really hard-nosed. People like playing for him. He's going to make 2 coordinator switches. He's going to bring in Quinn Sanders at OC and DC Rob Harley. If you remember, Nick Bendetto is their DC the last couple of years, just took a job at Fresno State. This is the most transfers that Hammock's ever brought in. 13 he brings in this year. That is more than the last 3 years combined. They're going to have a lot of these hit. Let's start on the offense, right? Transition to Sanders is a much different offensive coordinator than what they've had there in the past. Hammock likes running the football. He's always had good backs. He's always had a quarterback that can move around well. He's always had a good offensive line. Now the offensive line thing stays the same. You got to work a new quarterback in Josh Holst that honestly, like, they're very high on. I was watching some podcasts and some shows and reading some things through the Northern Illinois world. And I think the kid's special, that he moves around really well. And even with the loss of a quarterback this year, like, they feel like this is going to be their starter day one. They won't be that much of a battle. And he's going to want, again, going back to him, he's going to want a really good running game. And so having a quarterback that's mobile really helps into that. Again, it's a production turnover from a season ago. The offensive line needs a reset, but it feels like that's a group that always does well at Northern. Top pass rushers are gone, but there's top pass catchers are gone, sorry. And then the offensive line, go back to that. Like, they still have a left tackle and Evan McClone. I think that's how you say his name. That's going to be probably all MAC, like one of the first, second team all MACs. And it's just one of those groups that feels like they're going to have an identity to run the ball. It just might look a little bit different. It's going to be get on the edges a little bit more, see if we can get the ball in the air, have a more productive passing game. They're just going to need a lot of guys to step up. People to know within this, Telly Johnson Jr., probably going to be running back 1 for the Huskies this year, but they also bring in a couple other options. Very good running back room that Northern Illinois is touting a little bit. They also bring in a guy in Siobhan Wright. He's a D2 transfer coming in from Charleston, not College of Charleston. He's coming in from Charleston, the D2 school. D2 leading rusher a season ago, been an absolute weapon at that level. I think he's going to be, a running back 2, if not a running back 1B to Telly Johnson's running back 1A. Also, I just think it's interesting to look at what Northern's done and what the rest of the MAC's done. The MAC traditionally has quarterbacks that like to sling it around a little bit. They're going to have to find a way to do that. Now, defensively, this is kind of where they've made their hay the last couple of years as well, right? There's a really good, strong defensive unit. The last couple of years has been top 40 in S&P plus in the country, not just one of the top units of the MAC, but numbers-wise, one of the top units throughout the country. Pass rush and linebacking core should be solid. A lot of that's coming back. It's going to be probably their 2 best units on the entire team. The defensive ends, I think, are going to bookend one of the better defensive line units within the conference. Roy Williams and Jelani Williams, very good MAC defensive end unit. They got after the quarterback a ton of season ago, and they're really going to help the linebackers run free and shore up that back end. That was not great for them last year. The DBs weren't bad, but it wasn't a great DB situation. You didn't feel like you were going to get hit over the top. Now, a couple things with them on the defensive side. The scheme is going to be pretty similar to what they ran a season ago, but they really need young DBs to hit. They're going to need the interior part of the defensive line to be better in stopping the run, because when they were getting beat, they were getting beat with the run, and that just caused a lot of issues and everything. So looking kind of at everything here, you need to know this about Northern Illinois, and I wrote this down. How much confidence can this team build before they make the transition into the Mountain West in 26? I don't feel like you can go into the Mountain West in 26 feeling like kind of iffy about things, like you don't have a true identity, you don't have a proven leader at quarterback, there's too much turnover, things like that. It's a program that can recruit within the MAC, and if they can get their feet under them and feel confident going into the Mountain West in 26, maybe it's a program that can blossom for 3 or 4 years within tougher competition. So schedule preview time, like no time for growing pains, right? There's a real possibility that they're dogs in 4 out of the first 5, and they're going to catch 3 of the top 4 in the MAC projections on their schedule, only missing Buffalo. It's a tough sled. It's a tough ask for this team to get back to like 8 wins, but 6, 7, I mean, going to a bowl game is probably expected within Northern Illinois ranks, and I think they can do it. What they actually look like is still a little bit of a mystery offensively, and how good can the defense get? Because it feels like they're going to have to carry some weight.
Yeah, I like that full breakdown because it's a team that everybody kind of has this opinion on because everybody sticks out that obviously the gigantic upset last year, but then after that upset, they become the MAC favorite. Like people are like, all right, this team's got to win the MAC, right? Like they're going to compete for it. And then there's just those slip ups afterward that they just kind of didn't pan out. And now everybody's wondering, are they capable of that again? And some just storylines that are going to be fun to follow within this conference. Jake, your thoughts on this team?
Well, first of all, I'm glad, JP, I'm really glad you mentioned the returning production stat, because as I'm going through this whole thing, find me another team besides Toledo that I think brings back more than 2 starting offensive linemen.
Yeah.
Most of them have 1 if 0. Like I didn't even mention Miami, Ohio brings back 0 starters. And I know Northern Illinois has Malcor, which they can rely on, but that's going to be the name of the game because they're going to use Telly Johnson a bunch, but they're also going to have other guys in the backfield that they're going to rely on. It's who Thomas Hammock is, even the new OC. They're still going to run the ball a ton, and it's going to be their bread and butter. But I think it depends on that offensive line because they can't run block again, kind of like last year. That guys, you got to remember, they only scored 16 points to beat Notre Dame, and that was Notre Dame's offense was really abysmal at that point. So they can't luck out much of that going into 2025, I think.
There's opportunities here on this schedule too. I know JP mentioned it, but I mean, early in the season, you go play on the road at Maryland. They've made some changes to that staff. And then the next week you go on the road in the SEC against Mississippi State, who, reminder folks, I'll tell you later on, but got blown out by Toledo last year. So, I mean, there's an opportunity there. I don't know if that's to the caliber of what Notre Dame upset was, but still nonetheless, a good team to preview and follow. Thanks, JP. Let's move it down the line. Let's keep talking. Let's talk the other Ohio, not the Miami one. Let's talk the Bobcats. I'll take you through them. This is a fun one and a very important team within this conference, obviously winning it last year. For the first time since 1968, Ohio won the MAC conference after a lot of turnover. What are they going to have again, folks? Some more turnover, including their head coach, Tim Albin. He departs over to Charlotte. They promote within once again. Here comes Brian Smith. He was their former OC. He'll now be the acting head coach. Scott Isfording, he'll take over the offensive coordinator position. He coached the quarterbacks in the past, so that stays within. And then they retain John Hauser, which is a massive piece for them. You win the MAC. You win 11 games. You go 7-1 within your conference. You should have all the confidence in the world. You promoted within, but the turnover, I think it's going to be a constant theme tonight that we're going to talk over the turnover of these teams, even the champions. And that probably is going to be a recurring theme within the G5. Let's start with their offense. Obviously, everybody wants to know. Jake started with their quarterback over for Miami of Ohio. Let's start with the probably other star quarterback within this league. Debatable, but Parker Navarro. Parker Navarro comes back for Ohio this season after throwing for 13 scores last year and rushing for 18. Obviously, a very good dual threat option. And he was playing in the shadow of Curtis Rourke, who left this program. People kind of didn't know. Here comes the backup. Did he play better than Curtis Rourke? I think most Ohio fans would agree. So having him back is obviously massive news. In the backfield, they get a guy back from the portal. He left for a year in C.A. Bangura. He will come back from Minnesota. He departed last year, only played in 3 games for the Golden Gophers. He comes back. He was actually Ohio's leading rusher in 2023. So nice retention piece there. Should be a nice 1-2 option in the running game for Ohio. I will say Navarro, obviously we talked about him running and he added a viable option. He loses his top target on the outside, but he has some reliable options. There's 3 returning guys that he threw to consistently throughout the year for that offense. So it should give a nice balanced look. Jake, you just mentioned it. The offensive line kind of got depleted. They only returned 1 starter and they brought in some smaller school guys to fill the gaps. But until we really see this product and whether or not they can keep Navarro upright is really pending on whether or not this offense can be sustainably successful throughout the entire season. So that will be an interesting story to follow. The team overall returns 47% of their production from 2024, and that ranks 94th in the country. That sounds scarier than it is because if you look across the MAC, if you're trying to just compete for a conference title, it's kind of a similar numbers around the entire conference. They did lose a lot of talent mentioning back to 2023 into the 2024 season. You know, you lose the branding of Frank Solich and how hard-nosed and gritty he made that program. Tim Albin steps up. You win a conference title. Now he departs. Can you do it again? Can you really repeat that is the question lying here. On the defensive side of the ball, this was the star of that championship team last year, in my opinion. And they only allowed 19 points per game. That ranked them top 15 in the country. They lost 7 of 11 starters from that group. So they've got to replace some pieces here to even get similar numbers or manageable numbers to try and go back-to-back here. The retention piece of the defensive coordinator was massive in my mind because they added a good amount of transfers that actually aren't bad and are pretty projectable. They may be young or some inexperienced, but one guy that I think you should keep tabs on in that transfer realm is Ricky Hyatt Jr. Comes over from South Alabama, and he originally was a Kentucky transfer. So, you know, he's got that projectability for the Power 4 level. He posted 14 solo tackles and 2 tackles for loss. He had obviously much more tackles in total, but being a defensive back, those numbers sometimes get skewed. Could be a good guy to step up within this new, not culture-built unit under the same defensive coordinator who we've seen develop well over his time. They were pretty, I don't know how to say it other than unreal against the rush last year. I mean, they only allowed 3.1 yards per carry, put them top 10 in the country in that category. So the defensive line comes a question. They had to reload that. I mean, you only retained 4 guys from that group. Here comes the defensive line. And one guy I want to note of here is a transfer from Arkansas Pine Bluff. I might get this name wrong, gentlemen. Come at me, Ohio fans, if you want. Anis Lunkman, I believe his name is 6'4" D end. I think he's got a lot of projectability and can fill those gaps and somewhat play up to the caliber of last year's unbelievable rush defense. They also brought in a guy from Youngstown State who will nose the middle. He's pretty good. So a couple of options that we really won't know until we see on this Ohio defense. Overall, looking at this team, I think it's kind of a similar question that we had of Ohio last year, right? Like, you don't know. You lose your starting quarterback. Can the backup prevail? So now that question switches over to the defense. Can you fill those gaps? Can you repeat what you did last year on some sort of fashion? If they can, I think they can find success. I mean, you're not going to find a lot of teams outside of the G5 that are going to win their conference like Ohio did in a dominant fashion over Miami of Ohio and then be ranked in that 4th or 5th realm come the preseason. So until we get to see this team on the field, there's a lot of question marks lingering. I think if you can keep Navarro upright and healthy with all the new offensive line pieces, you're going to be in a much better spot than if not. However, the schedule, gentlemen, brutal schedule. 70th overall in the country, hardest schedule in the MAC. Let's go just through the first 3 games. I don't love them. Rutgers, going to be competitive. Rutgers can be great. They were projected high last year. Could be a dogfight. They host West Virginia. In comes West Virginia. Obviously, Rich Rod in town now. You don't know what they're going to be, but then you go on the road to the defending national champions, Ohio State. So weeks 0 through 3, you're going to learn a lot about Ohio, and it's whether or not they can bounce back and handle that adversity under a guy that's been within the program. So I don't know what you guys think on Ohio. Obviously, it's a similar turnover from 23 to 24 to 24 to 25. What are your thoughts on the Bobcats? Anything I missed, Jake?
Oh, he's got the mute button. I'll go ahead while he mutes. Just hiring from within and keeping some of those pieces in line feels like the identity is not going to change. Feels like this is going to be a continuation of success in some ways. So I think that goes farther than you think it does at some of these small programs. If they feel like they're home and they feel like they're comfortable within a program, and it's hire from within. I mean, that goes a long ways for a lot of these kids. Yeah,
especially in the transfer portal. I like that. Jake, all right, let's hear your thoughts now.
I was just asking, is there a rivalry name for the Ohio State-Ohio game? Do we have an in-state rivalry?
I don't know. There should be, though.
I mean, it's got to be.
If Ohio beats them, we got to make one up.
Yeah, I didn't have much to say either. I mean, after this team lost to Miami of Ohio last year, they were probably top after they lost in October, and then they went back to beat them. But after that, I mean, they rattled off, what was it, 8 in a row, and they were probably playing like a top 3 team in the G5. And they pretty much have everybody back, except for, like you mentioned, Parks, just filling in some spots on the lines. So it just kind of thinks to me, like, can Brian Smith just continue this culture? I don't think there's any excuse for you not to compete for a conference title again this year. After the brutal non-con, though, favorable MAC schedule, I think. I don't think it's too daunting.
Not terrible. On the road at Buffalo to end the year is tough, but there are other road games outside of their non-con, not bad at all. A lot of home games in there.
Yeah, so I think this is easily up for grabs for Ohio to get back to Detroit.
All right. Will Brian Smith be able to repeat the Tim Albin story from last year? We'll have to wait and see on that. Let's keep it moving. Let's go back to Jake. Jake's going to talk to us a little bit about Eastern Michigan. Take us to the gray turf, Jake.
Yeah, let's go to Ypsilanti, shall we? Chris Creighton, one of the most tenured coaches in all of college football, entering his 12th season at Eastern Michigan. I think the goal this year for them, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the fan base, but I think it's just to get back to a bowl game. He's established a pretty strong culture and consistently decent success, I think, within the MAC and competing for bowl games, which I think still matters to them. And it's just a matter of a lot of new faces. Like JP mentioned before, the returning production with this team feels slim. The quarterback race seems to be in question. It feels like right now everyone's giving the upper hand to Noah Kim just based on he's got, 5 Power 4 starts in the Big Ten under his belt. So at that point, what does that mean? Not much. I mean, he really couldn't. I think some injuries kept him out at Coastal last year, but he didn't stick around there either. So I wouldn't guarantee that he's going to be the guy, but it's a name to look out for. Terry Lockett Jr., one of the lone receivers returning. Like I said, this team is going through a lot of turnover, but he's a third-team all-conference guy. I think it's a guy that needs to help out whoever takes under center, but I think it's always tough to get the ball when the quarterback situation is not really figured out. The running back room has some depth. Dante McMillan is a guy who got hurt early in the season. He was projected to be running back 1, but I kind of assume the same. I don't really know the extent of the injury. I'm assuming he'll be back and ready to go, but the running back room might be the strength of the offense. Liberty transfer James Joyner's there. They get a Michigan transfer, and I think it's Tavier Dunlap. So these are 3 running backs that I think they're going to feel confident in. And like I said, we talk about the quarterback uncertainty. I think you're going to need to rely on your running backs to kind of carry the bulk of this offense. This is just, like I mentioned, one of the worst returning production teams in college football. They rank 116th in SP Plus on offense and 110th on defense. Defensively, doesn't really get much better, but you're going to be relying on some older guys. 9 of the 11 starters should be juniors and seniors. It's a group that brings back very little starting experience and snaps under their name, but it's an older group that you're hoping is just kind of ready for the moment and is able to take those steps and compete within the MAC. If you're going to look at the defensive side and where the strengths are, it's where your lone returning starters are at. It's in the secondary. Joshua Scott, one of the returning corners, Jamarian McNulty, another starting corner for them. So if there's one bright spot on the defense, it's just you hope the pass defense improves a little bit. But we'll see. I think Creighton's got his work cut out for him, but I also think this is a team in the MAC that I think it's hard to win at. I really do. I don't want to name excuses for him, but I think that he's got a tough task ahead of him this year. We'll see if they can get back to 6 wins. Like I said, would be a success.
Absolutely. I think it's a fun team to me because they're well known for the gray turf. But one quick plug in here in the middle of this team preview is I feel like the team boxes that have been delivered to John Gruden throughout the offseason has kind of brought some awareness to these programs of oh, that stuff's cool. And then they look into them. Eastern Michigan's a fun team to follow, and I think they're going to be like a video game ridden team in college football 26. So I like it. It's a quick breakdown, but it's really just the middle of the back end of the conference. So it's fair enough. JP, any thoughts on the Eagles?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Noah Kim thing would probably be, it feels like the smarter move to give you somebody that's been playing a little more experience. But
right,
if you're trying to find an identity in a team to get basically out of the middle of the conference of the pack to get to a bowl game, you'll try anything.
A couple of tough non-cons in there too, Jake. At Texas State to start the season, and then you host the Sun Belt team in Louisiana, who's pretty damn good, pretty consistently. So fun note to follow there. All right, that is Eastern Michigan. Let's move it down to Buffalo. JP is going to take us through the bowls for the 2025 season.
Yeah, you look at Buffalo and basically what became a program probably 2020 to 2023. 2020 to 22 in there. That was top end of the MAC. Very good stuff. Obviously, that things kind of flipped over. And when Leopold left to go to Kansas, but they're back. I mean, last year, wrote down, like, if you want to know an overview about Buffalo, last year's breakout was pretty unexpected, and now it's expected to go even higher. So go from zero expectations to compete for a MAC title, definitely be in that game and possibly win the darn thing. That's a lot to ask. Second year coach Pete Lembo, 9-4 and 24, like we just talked about, won a bowl game over Liberty. They kind of went on a run at the end of the year, like 4 straight regular season wins, win the bowl game, give them 5 in a row. It's a team, man, that I tell you, they know their identity. They know who their stars are. They know what they want to do. And that's why a lot of people are backing the Bulls here to, probably have a real shot to win the MAC. Top 50 in the country in returning production. That's on both sides of the football. Again, I'm telling you why this team is picked to win the MAC in some cases, if not at least get into the conference title. Let's start on the offense, though. Key pieces return on the running back room as well as the receiver room. But there's one difference here, and we'll talk about quarterback a little bit. If you remember the name Quan Roberson, this is a guy who was at UConn for a little bit, Kansas State for a little bit, now comes up to Buffalo, soon to be the starter up there. I think he brings a very unique skill set that is a little different than what they've had in years past, but it seems to be something that is definitely looked after and very excited about. You look at on the offense and the other things, like, they're not going to blow you away. It's not like they were giving up, a ton of numbers a season ago. They weren't doing a ton to be flashy. Like, it was an offense that struggled and sat in the middle of the pack for the most part. And to be real with you, like, the offensive line is going to be the reason that this team succeeds. 3 returners, both guards were all MAC a season ago. And then they bring in a guy from the FCS level from Long Island. He was an all-conference FCS guy a season ago. So if they can make that interior really good, the run game is just going to benefit from that. It's tough, to see this pass game go up. It's going to have to be Roberson that does that kind of thing for you. There are pieces on the outside, a receiver that could certainly help you do so. But I'm not going to sit there and tell you that this is going to take a huge burst just because they're all coming back, right? You're going to need things to really work out. They won a lot of low-scoring games a little bit then in the beginning of the year. Then later in the year, they kind of hit their stride and were just leaning on the defense to just melt guys and blow teams out is basically how that ended up going. Guys you need to know on the offense, Aljay Henderson, over 1,000 yards last year on the ground. And then the 2 receivers that I want to talk about, Victor Snow was the leading receiver from a season ago, and Nick McMillan. Missed most of 24, but was a really good receiver in 23 for the Bulls. I mean, there's options there. And you really hope that the pass game and the vertical passing game hits, because if the running game is struggling or Henderson's going to have to do more than is asked of him, it becomes tough to get this going. Defensive side of the things, a chance to have the best unit in the MAC. Simple as that. Like, this top to bottom, from the secondary into the trenches, is going to be one of the best units in the MAC. Linebacking core is full of tackling studs. A lot of them are going to have a chance to be on top of just about every stat category in the country, within the MAC as well. Headlined by Red Murdoch. This is a guy who was, I think, second a season ago in the nation in tackling behind his own teammate. Studs everywhere. They're very talented at what they do. Super disruptive was the defensive line in 24. They're going to need to really work, I think, on the secondary to get a little bit better. But when they're good, they're getting after the passer and they're getting some coverage sacks. But they have disruptors at the linebacker level in Murdoch Crawford and the defensive end Kobe Sturrett. 42.5 TFLs a season ago between the 3 and 20 sacks. Numbers don't lie. Those guys get after the quarterback. DBs need to improve. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. 3rd worst in the MAC a season ago with pass yards a game, giving up just over 245. Can't happen. That has to improve. Again, if you're getting after the quarterback, there's things that happen. But when they were getting beat, they were getting toasted. So that's something to pay attention to. Schedule preview-wise, like, you look at what Buffalo is and what the MAC really gives you a chance to do. The schedule is not grueling, but it does get a lot of the top half of the MAC. Like, they get probably, I think, a chance to see them favored 8 in the first 9 at one point. Like, not favored against Minnesota, probably going to be favored against the rest of those in the MAC. But you're going to have to win 2 games, if not 3 of the 4 at the end of the year to get into the MAC title. You're going to have to beat Bowling Green, who we're not sure about quite yet, and then Miami of Ohio, and then Ohio both. 2 tough ones towards the end of the year. it's tough to see what they're going to be, and the expectation just because you're returning doesn't always mean things. But the production itself was the studs. It wasn't just pieces, here or there. They had a really good over 1,000-yard running back a season ago, one of the nation's leading tacklers, very disruptive linebacking core and defensive end unit. I mean, sky's the limit for the Bulls in the MAC in 25.
Yeah, I mean, I think a great point you always bring up towards the end of these is we always touch briefly on the schedule to kind of wrap every preview up, but especially in the G5, I feel like we always find ourselves where when a team gets the good draws within the conference and then maybe they don't have an outstanding or a top 25 team that's just a for sure penciled in loss, or they draw a really bad Power 4 program or where they're at, they all of a sudden shoot up to the top of that conference preseason rankings just because that's how it works. And I feel like this is a really good picture of that. Is Buffalo had success last year by surprise, but the schedule this year outside of week 1, I feel really comfortable with them kind of doing the same thing, getting that 8-9 win mark. So what do you think, Jake?
This team reminds me of like TCU kind of last year, a team that took advantage of a favorable schedule, 9-4. I think TCU also went 9-4. It's interesting. You look at the defense and how much production they bring back, and they do bring back some studs. I'm not discrediting some of those guys on the defense. I really like Murdoch, but I mean, you had a stretch where you gave up 48 to Western, you gave up 47 to Ohio, you gave up 30 to Akron, you gave up 48 to Ball State. I know Ohio could put up some points, but I didn't know those other 3 teams could put up that many points. So makes me leave in question. But if you're a Buffalo fan, I think you're confident because they went in the portal and they only got in 8 guys. That's one of the lower numbers in the MAC. So it just tells me this staff and Pete Lambeau, like, they're good with what they got. They're good with the starters that come back, and they're ready to try and compete for this thing.
All right, let's leave that there. Good preview out of JP. Let's keep it moving down the line. Before I do, I want to give a quick shout out to the comedian in the comments. I Need Seaman is not a notable player. So if you're trying to look him up, he's not actually on there. Shout out, great joke. Almost got us. So close so far, but you had Jake and I rolling in the background. Quick shout out. We love the comments. So keep coming up with some great player names. You almost got us. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's talk the top half of the preseason rankings within this conference. Talk a little Toledo. The Rockets coming in from a 2024 season where it ranked 8-5, 4-4 in the MAC. Had some slip-ups that were a little unexpected and some battles that they won that nobody expected them to. I mean, a little bit of both. Head coach Jason Candle still there. No coaching moves, which feels like a story alone within these G5 previews. And we got to start on the offensive side of the ball with the guy on the cover of the episode, Tucker Gleason. He's back. Threw for over 2,800 yards last year, 24 touchdowns, and only 8 picks. So values the football. Going to need to do that again this year. I thought his decision-making was pretty good last year. Went back, watched some of their clips. Big-time wins on the road within the SEC. Obviously, you kind of get a good idea of whether or not a G5 program can make a run at something. But then they had slip-ups later in the year that just didn't make sense. Like, you can't go on the road and beat Mississippi State and then lose to Akron second to the last week of the season. It just can't happen. So you got to avoid those games this year, but a lot of people expect them to, and we'll tell you why later. Going back to the offense, the weapons on the outside are there. In my mind, you return Junior Vandervoss III. He's first team All-MAC last year. And then you add a nice little transfer piece from NIU, who not this past season, but the season before was All-MAC, and Travion Rudolph. That's a nice addition for Gleason. If he can get some extra time back there in the pocket, you never know. You see, those numbers could take a bump. It could be 3,200 yards this year, and that's what most of Toledo fans and MAC fans in general expect from this team. They also brought in, this is of note, and not often do we get to do this in G5 previews, but a 4-star, not a transfer, a commit, a high school recruit, 4-star kid, and Omar Mims as a recruit could make an impact as a freshman. You never know. You just don't see that very often. The running game took a massive step back for this program in 2024. In 2023, they averaged a good number of rushing yards a game. Last year, the offensive line, granted, the play calling was a part of it, but the offensive line kind of took a step back, and they weren't putting up as much rushing yards, which maybe led to those 4 MAC losses that really took them away from an even better season after winning on the road against Mississippi State. They do help that this year by bringing in a transfer that everybody should know this name because you've probably seen him somewhere. Chip Trainum. It's been all over the Power 4 map. Ohio State, Kentucky, had some injury issues. He's at Toledo now. So he hopefully offers you a experienced, at full health, viable option for this backfield. He's going to be running back number 1 for this group as long as he's healthy. The O-line, this is where kind of Toledo separates themselves in my mind. It's pretty stacked up. They have a nice depth heading into the 2025 season. You have returned 3 starters, which feels like news alone again in this conference. But then you add a Cincinnati and a Pitt transfer to join that group. Should be, like I said, that nice pocket, maybe a nice running lane for Chip Trainum from this offensive group. So I expect them to be even a step better than they were last year, which is why they're picked ahead in most media forums to win this conference. On the defensive side of the ball, there's a little bit fewer of question marks here. And I don't want to say the offense was full of question marks, but it feels like one unit or the other is really where the MAC is right now, is going to be the fallback. It's a pretty balanced attack of returning production in terms of the G5 and the MAC. Majority of the returning production comes from the secondary of this group. Guys like Avery Smith, Braden Alls, who Braden Alls had led the team in interceptions last year with 4. Guys like that returning are going to be good for this group to have the stability to build off of. You retain the coaches, which is obviously massive news, just like we talked about with Ohio. But I think turnovers are going to be super important for this group. They didn't cause a lot of turnovers last year. And if they can do that this year, I think it just leads them to be where they're projected to be. Up front, they brought in some transfers. They're going to need to be sturdy for this group because they defended the rush really well sometimes and really terribly sometimes, which can kill you, as most know. So these transfers are going to need to be sturdy up front, rely on that experienced, cultured back end, and this team will take a step forward on defense as well. Overall, they're pretty much picked to win this conference or be in the conference title game by every media platform. And it's for good reason. And Tucker Gleason, a lot of it falls on his shoulders. You got to, similar to Navarro, you got to keep him upright. The offensive line, with the experience they brought back and the transfers they brought in, makes it seem like that's not going to be a problem. You know what else is going to be a problem? Just what I told you about Buffalo. The strength of schedule for this team is 133rd out of 136 teams. It's there. They can get to Detroit. I see a 9-win season. I see a 10-win season for this Toledo team. And I expect one of these two gentlemen sitting next to me to pick them to be in the conference title game along with me, along with most of the country. Guys, your thoughts on the Rockets, their schedule, whatever you're thinking, Jake. You're on mute, Jake. Nice. He took it off.
I'm good. This is not my first podcast. I am ready to put on the shield for the podcast here, and I say this with love. Because I do think that this is head and shoulders the most talented team in the conference. But how many times have we seen Toledo be the most talented team in the conference and come up short? Now, I know Candle has 2 conference titles under his belt in his time since taking over for my beloved Matt Campbell. But it makes me skeptical. I think this year is the year where they can take advantage. And honestly, I really, truly say this. Outside of Kentucky, we'll see what happens when they go to Lexington. But I think this team could compete for that G5 spot in the playoff. I think the talent's there. But also, like losing to Akron at the end of the year
can't happen.
Kind of goes with what I'm saying. One of the years Candle won a title, they were 8-5. I mean, that's just one of the luckier draws. You need to go 11, 10 wins in this conference, in this league. And I think the talent is there to do it. I think really highly of this team, but sometimes I think, and I know the fan base loves Candle, and I know the players do. That's why they come back. But I'm just a little skeptical. But we'll save that for prediction time, I guess.
I also like the early season show we're going to get with the FCS guys. Western Kentucky brought in and expects to have an explosive offense. They get a chance at redemption here in week 2 because Western Kentucky beat Toledo last year in a really close game. Now Western Kentucky travels out to play them on the road. So that should be a fun one in week 2 and one to note. JP, your thoughts on the Rockets?
Yeah, I mean, it's a team that feels like everybody in the conference understands that they are just a little bit of head and shoulders above everybody within the recruiting ranks and bringing guys in and talent acquisition.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean anything in the MAC. So like Jake said, like going to pick to win everything. We're picked to win everything a season ago. That's, you got to do it, right? So saying the MAC team is going to grab that G5 bid is a lot because you got to have the conference respect first. So their bid in getting the G5 bid is going to require them to probably close. If they play power conferences, win it or be close, and the rest of the MAC has got to make noise too.
And I know it was Mississippi State last year, but it means something. They still went to Starksville and just I mean, blew the doors
Mississippi
off.
State
Like,
wasn't like that bad
Yeah,
that early in the season. Like they didn't know that they were that bad yet.
and so I know Kentucky's going to be improved this year. They're not going to be as bad as Mississippi State, but that's still like you win that game, you go 11-1, 12-0. That resume is most definitely good enough to get you in that G5 spot.
I love the mention though, JK. And now you got me rethinking. You get to look into this team, see what the fans are saying, and then you think back, and then you draw back to like what has Toledo done with the teams that we've talked about this before.
They're talking about Chip Trainum now. Before I get clipped for this,
here we go.
He's not Ashton Genty, but the way they're talking about him and what I've heard in like podcasts, like they think this guy is going to be a dude in the MAC.
Yeah, they do. I mean, he's been the amount of stops this guy's made, man. Arizona State, Ohio State, Kentucky. Like this dude's just bouncing.
First game of the year. Great opportunity.
He gets a little chance to make a name back at his old stomping grounds.
Shoulder.
He could do that. Yeah. Stop. No puns. No puns during preview season. All right. That is Toledo, obviously a team picked very highly in the conference. We'll probably touch on them later. Let's move it down to one of the brands that maybe isn't viewed as high. Let's go back to Jake. Let's talk a little bit of Zips football. Let's talk Akron. Jake, take us through them.
Yeah, Joe Moorhead in year 4, and I know they're ineligible, unfortunately, but I think 6 wins is still the goal. The program has seen some dark days. But I think there's some pieces back to where you can feel optimistic about it. And even though you can't go to a bowl game this year, I still think 6 wins is very viable. And I think it would be a huge shift in the momentum of the program. What better piece to start with than your starting quarterback coming back? That's not usually a piece that you can be optimistic about if you're a Zips fan. Ben Finley comes back after throwing for over 2,500 yards. I actually think there's something there. If we ranked all the MAC quarterbacks, he's close to half, which I think says something for a team like Akron. I really do. He's got Israel Polk coming in, a Pitt transfer. I think this is a guy to look out for to be on the rise. Alex Adams, first team all MAC 2022. That was a long, long time ago. He's battled injuries, but he's going to try to give it a go this year, and let's see if he can stay healthy and help out Finley. The run game to me, though, is very, very sketchy, not only with just the offensive line, but the guys they brought in. 2 FCS guys are going to be battling for that spot. And it's really like running back by committee at this point. So I think the passing game's got to be huge for them to take strides on offense this year. The defensive line, kind of like a lot of their MAC allies, they lose a lot of production. Bruno Dahl is a young guy, though, that showed a lot of flash. I think that's something to be excited about. And look out for Arizona transfer Cyrus Durham at the edge. I think that was a good pickup for Akron. I really do, and I think he has a chance to make some noise. But when you're a team like Akron, you can't really rely on, grabbing a bunch of P4 dropouts, the guys that really didn't play. You got to be creative with it. And they did. They brought in a linebacker from Division II Walsh. And shout out to our Iowa boys, their cornerback, Ben Kamara, D2 transfer from Upper Iowa. I believe he's from Urbandale, JP. Urbandale or Waukee, one or the other. So I did have to give my Iowa shout out there. And he's going to be starting for him right away. I think both those guys are going to be starting for him. So the defense could be okay. I think that this team isn't as bad as years past, but I think it's going to have a shot to go to 6 wins. I mean, if you want to look at the schedule, at UAB, Wyoming, and Duquesne are your 3 out of 4 non-con games. Now they play at Nebraska clearly, but those are 3 manageable non-con games. UAB, I think Dilfer's out. Wyoming is coming off a rough year, and you get him at home.
Yeah.
So I would love to see this team win 6 wins. I really would.
I think it's fun. I think one shameless plug I want to make is one of the best parts about these previews for me is, we're all fans of Power 4 teams, but then getting to dive into maybe the G5 programs or hearing about from one another what the program that's coming in to play our squads are going to look like is always fun. Because like I said, I'll get to see this team live in Lincoln on week 2. So good insight there from Jake. Any thoughts on the Zips, JP?
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing that Akron can do to really help their football program, it's put the kangaroo back on the helmet.
Oh, yeah. We talk about that every year.
Shame.
No,
that
A is terrible.
Brandon was so good. Actually, I have a challenge. no rivals. I don't know how many MAC teams we have on the site right now, but if you can get me an Akron hat with a kangaroo on it, I will be
Yeah.
your first purchase.
I was
I
going
like
to say
that.
too, I don't know why I didn't make it. Parks, you should have done the Akron, and then I'm taking UMass, and JP should have taken. Get your guys' little preseason breakdowns on your teams you're going to be seeing this year out of the MAC. Your deadly
We
MAC
should
opponents.
We definitely should have done that. We'll keep that in mind coming. We got the next 3 group of 5 previews coming up these next weeks. So we'll maybe do that. I like that insight. All right, let's move it back to Central Michigan. JP is going to take us through the Chippewas into the 2025 season. Go with it, JP.
Hey, fire up Chips. One of the better brands within the MAC. I think this team does a really good job of using the color scheme. But let's talk Chippewas a little bit. Win total of 5.5. They're also going to break in a new coach this year, Matt Drinkle. They're 4-8 and 24. Bring in Drinkle. I think there is a lot of hype around the program and a lot of excitement as well within everything. Offensive coordinator wise, they're naming co-offensive coordinator. They got Jim Chaplin and Derek Fulton. Defensive coordinator Sean Cronin. Coaching staff has a presumed identity. I wrote this down as just like there's a presumed identity of what they're going to do, right? And how they're going to get things in place. It may take another year or so because it feels like things were downsliding more than they should have in Mount Pleasant. They're going to run it well. They're going to play stout in the trenches, and they're not going to beat themselves. That's the whole plan of this coaching staff. Let's just see how it works out here in 24. Offensively, it's going to be a little bit interesting to see how that all works. Chapman was the offensive coordinator at Eastern Washington, the FCS level the last couple of years. There's not any true proven commodities anywhere on the offense that you're really going to look at and be like, super happy that we have that guy back. The the offensive line has to do some turnover wise. At the quarterback position, I think that there is flashes. I'm talking about Joe Labus, Iowa transfer, showed flashes last year and early. Had a really, really rough one against FIU in week 2. But outside of that, I think his touchdown interception ratios weren't bad. Like it was about 7-2 right in there through 3 or 4 games before he got hurt. He returns. He's going to be the guy. Interesting to see how he progresses in his second season in the MAC. Trey Crunzit is going to, be one of those guys on the offense that is a little more expected to break out on the running back room. Again, not proven commodities. I'm looking at this like a ton of the pass catchers leave or miss season or time in 24. Neither tight end on the roster that's expected to be in the 2 deeps caught a touchdown pass a season ago. It's tough. If you look at what they're going to be, it's probably going to be a little run heavy, but Labus can sling it, and they weren't afraid to do it a season ago. So if they can get him comfortable and keep him upright, that offense, may hum a little bit and scare some people for sure. Drinkle's an Iowa guy. That means they're going to be offensive line guys. So that tells you a lot about where they sit and how this team's going to build. 1 returning starter, 2 FCS transfers. Things you got to hit, things you got to gel, or it does not matter what kind of identity you want to have offensively here in 25. Defensively, super disruptive interior actually a season ago, but they just couldn't get turnovers. 5 total turnovers in 2024 from that defense. Rough. I mean, that's bad turnover luck. That's why people call it turnover luck and not just an ability to make turnovers. Like there's some skill to it, right? You got to have guys in the right positions, making the right plays, but sometimes it just doesn't go your way. Now, the linebacking core is solid. They also bring in a safety, Caleb Spann. I think he's going to be a good base of this defense. Quarterback room seems to be in good hands. There's not a ton that you can say that's going to be star power, but they should improve statistically simply by bringing a new defensive coordinator that's going to have guys in a position to succeed, and as well as having a season under your belt here. So working to improve those things, and maybe things just flip turnover wise. Like maybe it's just one of those years that a ball flies your way or bounces your way, and there's a real possibility that, the Chips have a chance to go bowling here, because with the win total where it is at 5.5, you look at the schedule, there's a real possibility here that this is one of the easier schedules in the MAC. And that is the no knock on what Central may do this season, but it's a real, it's a real testament to how these bigger conferences work. You add in UMass, you're going to have a different scheduling dynamic into this whole thing. No Ohio, no Miami of Ohio. They see 4 of the bottom 5 projected teams within the MAC. I mean, you don't know what they're going to be quite yet. Like there's a real question mark on offensive identity and how good they can get defensively, but they were pretty darn good defensively a season ago. And if it can get a little bit better, and if the offense can just be consistent, because it struggled last year at times in the MAC and was bottom in some of the numbers. I mean, 7-6 wins is not out of the question for them. we'll just see how long it takes to get to that point. Maybe it's a year or two away, but it doesn't feel like – I feel like they could scare some people this year. It just doesn't feel like that they're going to be at the top of the conference.
Yeah, I think it's a good place to leave Central Michigan. I think when you think as a fan of college football and just the nostalgia is such a huge pull for college football in general, I always think of Central Michigan as a program that you just randomly flip on and they're like ahead against one of those Power 4, Power 5 opponents back in the past, or beating a team on the road. Like I always flash back, Jake, I'm sure you remember as the Big 12 guy, the Oklahoma State like flip catch to beat Oklahoma State. And that was awesome. So I think of this program as just like that upset ridden team. They've got some opportunities here. I mean, interesting at Pitt and at Michigan. At Michigan feels like a stretch because they play them almost every year, but at Pitt and honestly, even start the year, San Jose State, I don't know how heavy of favorites they'll be in that game. So that one's fun to watch. Jake, your thoughts on the Chips headed into 2025?
This team is right in the middle, man. Like, I think that this team, like JP said, could just benefit from an easier schedule this year. Because when they lost, what was it, 6 of their last 7? They had Ohio, they had at Miami of Ohio, they had at Toledo, they had Bowling Green, and then to cap off the year, they had at Northern Illinois. Like, it might just be the year where they get, like JP said, Akron, UMass, and Toledo and Kent State all on your schedule this year. Should be 3 wins.
Who knows? All you need is just that different draw, and 4-8 can turn into 8-4 really fast, and maybe that's why they're projected where they are. I mean, schedules are so important, like we mentioned earlier. All right, that is the Chips in 2025. Let's keep it moving. Let's go on to Kalamazoo. Let's talk Western Michigan football. This one's always very fun. It's one of those brands that you're trying to revitalize the old PJ Fleck days, and along the lines of Akron JP, quick chirp at them. Once you rebranded that stupid W, things went south really quick. But 2024, this team went 6-7, played in a bowl game, 5-3 in the MAC. You had a winning conference record, which is always something that's nice, but you just couldn't do some things outside of your conference to make your season better. I mean, you retain your coach, third year of the program, Lance Taylor. Here comes a new defensive coordinator in Chris O'Leary. The defensive coordinator rehaul and revamp is really what this team needed and possibly could lead them to maybe a winning season instead of a 6-7 record. But that really feels like the cap, not to give too much away. On the offensive side of the ball, let's start there. It's an interesting story on this side of the ball because you got a QB competition. Nobody really knows because you got a guy coming back from injury in Brock Lowry, and then you bring in a JUCO transfer in Brady Jones. They're said to have been dueling it out this spring. Nobody has a set answer on who's going to take the snaps come August, but it really does lean Brock Lowry, and he's a viable option and a decent quarterback. But Brady Jones' JUCO film was a sight to behold, and his statistics were behind it. This offense put up nearly 400 yards per game last year, so it sounds great, but they only returned 2 starters. The team as a whole only returns 33% of their production from 2024, and that includes the defense. So it feels like an overhaul, not only in the coaching realm of the defensive side, but as a team, which sucks when you put up 400 yards a game. But when we talk about the defense, it maybe is good news. I feel like preview season is always so full of, especially my previews in general. I say, well, this is a question mark. Well, this is a question mark. Well, I just want to raise those questions because this whole team feels like that. And we really won't know if Western Michigan, under the same leadership, a new defensive side who can change the entire program, if they were to be able to get some stops last year, can pan out this season. So this is a massive question mark just as a whole general team, because on that defensive side, this is where the overall has to happen. They didn't have a single notable defensive stat in the top 100 rankings last year. I mean, seriously, it was points per game, yards per carry. I mean, they were all outside of the top 100 in college football. They just couldn't get a stop at all. They do return one good piece from that, an all-MAC safety in Tate Hollick. He's the best retention piece by far. They gave up over 30 points a game, so how good can a retention piece be at all when you're doing that? At least the back end has a guy that's been in the room. You're going to have a new DC. He stays around. He can somewhat establish the good side of things that the very few and far between came for this Western Michigan teams. But good God, the transfers that they're bringing in, they bring in transfers from a couple of smaller schools at the corner position, a lot of inexperienced players at the linebacker position and defensive line position. But I just don't know. The question mark lingers. They need to get more stops. Brock Lowry needs to take a massive jump forward. The rushing game, the offensive line is kind of getting overhauled. The team is just changing. So it doesn't feel like they're in a good spot to be anywhere outside of the top 8 to 10 teams in this conference. That's really where I see them, is they're going to be 9th or below. I think it could be dead last, pending the preview I'm about to give you, but I see them in that 9 to 11 range of this conference. If you would be successful at this school this season, you would need to be like a Sam Houston State was in 2024. Like, you're going to need to slow the game down enough where you can win games 12 to 15 or 9 to 3. Like, that's the only way I can see Western Michigan getting to 7 wins, 6 or 7 wins, just because of the defense and all the overhaul that they needed. But it should be a step up. They travel on the road early to Michigan State and Illinois, which are 2 tough matchups. Not exactly tough places to play, but everybody knows how people are high on Illinois this year. They host North Texas in week 2, who's an offense that's always ready to go with offense coordinator Jordan Davis over there. So they could give up about 60 points in that game. So you could start 0-3. That's the bad news. What are your guys' thoughts on the Broncos heading into 2025? JP?
Good news is Jalen Buckley, if he stays healthy, is the best running back in the MAC. Like, he's one of the 2. I mean, you could have a real conversation about him being up there. It was what, all MAC?
Now with Chip Trainum,
freshman. I mean,
MAC
he's
freshman
up
of the MAC freshman of the year.
Yeah, like 2 years ago, battled the injury last year. Some of these smaller conferences, you get a running back like really humming. It changes what your offense can do, and it changes the projection of a season.
Well, and Jaden Nixon transferred over from Okie State last year and also kind of took the 1 spot after Buckley got hurt. So it's kind of just a good reset for Buckley, I think. But, like, I don't know if this team is going to get to 6 wins. But when we talk about just the Michigan schools between Eastern, Central, Western, this team is the most interesting to me, and I think they could be the most fun because I think they're going to put up points. You listed them statistically on defense. It's pretty rough. But Lance Taylor brought in he's like, I'm overhauling everybody from P4. I really don't care if you have any experience to your name. Come play for the Broncos, and let's see if it works out. Another name to watch out for, Christian Leary, wide receiver from Georgia Tech and Alabama, was a big-time recruit. I remember when he transferred to Georgia Tech, and it was a big deal. Again, name of college football this day and age, didn't pan out. Let's see if it pans out in Kalamazoo. I hope it does, because I think this team could be fun on a little MAC November Wednesday.
Possibly could. Definitely a lot of questions in Kalamazoo, but a fun team to maybe note. They could make some noise if things go right and they finally click over there. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's go to Bowling Green, a team that was one of our betting favorites from last year, I would say. A fun team to bet on, a dangerous team for what seemed to be all the Power 4 schools. Jake, take us through them.
Yeah, was my dark horse last year to make the MAC title game. Still to this day, thought they were at least one of the 2 best teams in the conference, and they just couldn't really finish at the end. But a team that competed, if you remember, they competed at Happy Valley. They competed in College Station against 2 of the top programs in P4. Now they've got some change. We just talked about fun in Western Michigan. This team it's fascinating, and I don't know where the direction of this team really goes. Scott Loeffler leaves kind of just in the middle of the off season as he heads to the, I think it was the Eagles, right? As he's quarterbacks coach or something for the Eagles, and in comes Eddie George. I think this is an exciting one. It kind of reminds me, obviously, of Coach Prime coming over from Colorado, except this is the G5 level. You take a Tennessee State coach, and let's see if he can bring something fun to Bowling Green. While he was at Tennessee State, Georgia's offense were pretty pass heavy. Like, they had a guy who threw for over 3,000 yards at Tennessee State. Don't expect that here. Like, Eddie George is a smart football mind. He knows what works in the MAC in November on a Wednesday night when it's freezing cold and it's snowing. You're going to want to run the football. And I mean, for a guy who wants to run the football, I think you got a pretty good teacher at that, the former Heisman winner. The top 3 rushers from this team are gone, though, unfortunately. So leads a lot of uncertainty. I think that's why it's so interesting. It's just a lot of unknowns with this team right now through spring ball, and we just don't really have access to know who's going to be the main guys, and that's what fall camp's for. But the guy at quarterback, kind of waited to bring him up. Everybody knows this name if you're a college football diehard. Try Drew Pine, the old Notre Dame transfer, started there for a couple of games and then
been everywhere.
Went to Mizzou. Didn't work out. I don't know if he's even top 4 in this conference, but it's something to build upon. I think, is he better than Bazelak? I actually don't know. I really don't know. So it's something to try out. It's an old P4 guy with a decent amount of experience. So we'll see if the Drew Pine experience works. But let's, like, big elephant in the room. How do you replace Harold Fannin Jr., the leading receiver in all of college football? You probably don't. But if I had to highlight a guy, I'm highlighting a receiver in Finn Hogan. This is a dude at, like, I think he's 6'5", just tall, lengthy, big catch radius. You throw to him in the red zone. I think he's going to be that guy you're going to have to target. He's probably going to be the guy that has to break out for them in the passing game. And then Eddie George brings some guys over from Tennessee State. He brought over a couple, not a ton. Brings over his kid, Eric, who was actually a pretty decent recruit in the transfer portal. I think he was second team all-conference last year for his dad at Tennessee State. So he has a chance to help his dad out on defense there. Long story short, long-term, honestly, I think this could be a good hire for BG. I really do. I think Loeffler left this program in a good spot. It's just kind of one of those things where it's a lot easier to be a position coach in the NFL than it is to be coaching a G5 team where you're having to renew your roster each and every single year. But I hope the Eddie George experience works because I think it's good for the MAC, and I think it's a good brand that can really put this team on the map. Where's this team stand in 2025? I honestly think if you get back to 7 wins, that's a successful season. I think in year one, as George took over, and like I said, what was that? March, February? It was a pretty quick turnaround. So I think bowl game is the bar for this team this year.
I like where you put that. I mean, Drew Pine's expected to be the starter, but I thought Bazelak last year was good for this team. Like, I think Harold Fannin only had the opportunity to be the leading receiver in college football because of the quarterback. So a lot of it falls on his shoulders of whether or not this offense can even run smoothly at all in the first year under a new head coach and a new system. So I like the breakdown. JP, any thoughts on the Falcons headed into 2025?
Yeah, it is a little bit of a mystery. They're going to need new playmakers, and I think there's the ability to find them quick. It's just, what does that look like now? Like, it's not going to be, there's no bailout option. So you're really going to have to find a way to keep something moving and keep drives moving.
I know I always kind of forget I briefly mentioned this because I never mentioned the schedule. But at Cincinnati, Liberty, at Louisville, at Ohio, Toledo. Those are your first 5 of your 6 games of the year.
Dude, they had some tough draws last year too. I mean, they went on the road to Happy Valley. They put up a fight there. They went on the road to the 12th man. I mean, they're kind of battle tested as a program, but being new, that schedule could be a wide awakening rather than what they saw last year. All right, that is Bowling Green. Let's go down to the next team. Let's talk a little bit of Cardinals football over at Ball State. JP, take us through them.
Muncie, Indiana has a chance, in a couple of years here they made a hire this year that I feel like could pay off here in a couple of years. Win total sits at 3.5. So there's not a ton right now that you're looking at like, hey, might be one of those Ball State teams that has a shot to make some noise. Now, it was one of the more interesting teams throughout the MAC that I read up on, and then obviously diving into some research. It was a ton of fun to learn about that. And a new head coach, Mike Uremovich. I got that off the website. It had the little, the ear. Every college football program needs that one. So Uremovich, he is the OC. He also brings in a guy that he's worked with before, and Craig Hartman, who's the pass game coordinator, and then retains the defensive coordinator from a season ago in the past, in Jeff Knowles. Now, was the defense very good last year? No, but they have experience together, and obviously there's a lot of faith within that room on what they'll do. He brings plenty of MAC experience, does Uremovich. He's a guy who's from the Midwest. He's from Indiana, has a ton of connections. And, it's just an identity thing. Like, what do you want to be at this level? At Butler the last couple of years, he's been one of those guys that's run the football well. They play good defense. The Pioneer League was, better than it has been in the last couple of years. Shout out to the Drake Bulldogs, won that one the last couple of years, just in the Des Moines connection there. But Uremovich seems like a guy that's the right hire, knows the state of Indiana, been in the state of Indiana, been in the MAC conference for a while. So super pumped for that hire. Offensively, let's kind of go through things because, I was going through a lot of the reading and the research and things and looking at the quarterback room and what some other guys have done. And it's kind of a question mark right now. Like Kyle Kelly was convinced to stay by this staff. I was already in the portal, kind of looking around a little bit, ends up staying. They're also able, to tell him he's going to have a chance to play quarterback and start, which is what he was looking for. He's been moved around to other positions while in his time at Muncie, but there are other guys they brought in. And then to be honest with you, there's names that are floated around that are people really excited about. They're bringing a Yale transfer and Braden Flaherty, a Colorado transfer, and Walker Taylor III. And then Aiden Leffler is a name that I've heard a couple of times as well. I don't know who's going to be the answer. I reached out to a couple of people here and Ball State people and hadn't heard back quite yet because I just want to know, the tea. I want to know what's going on and what the fall camp plan is for these names. Because if I'm hearing 4 names in your quarterback room, I want to know what the fans think and what people within the program think as well. Look at personnel-wise. It's a team that doesn't have a ton of size at a lot of the skill positions. I think with what the background is for Uremovich, like quick hitting, gets you in space with a good run game, I think that's going to be what they try to do because the guys that are playmakers for them are definitely guys who hit you with a little more speed than they are possession receiving ability when it comes to that. Defensively, this is a unit that was rough, and I underlined that here in 24. But Jeff Knowles remains a defensive coordinator. I told you there was a connection there between him and Uremovich. It's going to be a complete rebuild. They're going to completely kind of change how this looks. The scheme's going to stay the same. They're bringing in a ton of new guys and just looking for something to hit. 10 transfers on the defensive side of the football. 6 of them are DBs, majority being maybe that safety linebacker hybrid and then just safeties in general. There's a real chance here that it takes a year or two for this to gel with the amount of talent they brought in through the portal. But if the scheme stays the same, guys may gel with the rest of the team that's already staying around in Muncie. So looking at that, headlined by linebacker and Joyce Stemler, is going to be the guy that making all the plays. He's the guy that's going to run the defense. The defensive tackle, Darren Conley. I think they like the addition of Old Dominion transfer Ashton Whitner as well. 3 guys that I think are going to be the studs of this defense and really hold things down in Muncie. But again, there's a lot to change. You really have to get better against the pass a season ago. It was tough. I mean, they were getting torched consistently. The offense couldn't hang on to the football. And there wasn't a lot of identity going on last year. And there wasn't a ton of, this is Ball State, this is how we're going to handle things. So intriguing here in 25 to see what they look like. Again, just some guys that I think you need to know overall. The running back room, I think, is in a good spot here. They bring in Quay Ashley, kick returner, punt returner, was very good at Kennesaw a season ago, led the Owls in all-purpose yards last year. Receiver Keon Magwood led the team in receiving in 2024. And they're smaller guys. They're not guys, again, that are going to be possession receivers for you or like a pound the rock back. But they're guys that I think are really talented, and that's what they're going to be able to do is get them in space. And maybe that is all it takes. Maybe that's why Kyle might be your better option at quarterback is because his ability to move around and run. Schedule-wise, man, I think this is a tough one. This is a tough schedule for me because most of your tough games against better teams are on the road. That's a problem. They go at Toledo, at NIU, at Miami. And then if they win, 6 games, if they can get to that bowl game eligibility, they have to have the Western one. They have to have the Akron one. You have to beat UConn. You have to beat NIU. That's the tough road you walk with a schedule like this and team rebuilding completely. But I'm telling you, the Ball State stuff, I had a ton of fun researching and learning about them and what those coaching positions are and who Uremovich is as a guy and what he wants to build as a program. It just may be a year or two before Muncie's lifted any trophies.
I think a good side note for that schedule is it's really tough early and it's really tough late. Everything's got to happen in the middle because you finished the season with those 2 road games that you noted, JP, but then to start on the road at Purdue, that one, you throw up in the air with what is Purdue is, but then you got to travel in the SEC and play Auburn. So it really starts hard and finishes even harder within the conference. So interesting to note there. Jake, your thoughts on this squad?
I had a chance to listen to, I think it was called Heart of the Cardinal, a podcast for Ball State, and they interviewed Uremovich. Yeah. And he talked about his background, about being a high school coach when he was in college and all that stuff. And he just really emphasized on the offensive and defensive line and how important it is to him, especially coaching the offensive line. So I don't know what it means for Ball State in 2025, but I think it seems like his head's in the right spot. I think it's a good spot to start in when you can build off the trenches, and especially in the MAC. I think to be successful in the MAC, it's development in high school recruiting, and that's position no less.
All right, there it is. That is Ball State. Let's keep it moving. We are an hour and 17 into this. Should finish at the same time kind of did last week. Want to give a quick shout out to No Rivals. If you're just joining, Shop No Rivals are great partners. ShopNoRivals.com, our awesome collegiate headwear hats. We got our Texas Tech vintage hat on. We're always rocking No Rivals. Got actually the shirt on tonight too. So check them out at ShopNoRivals.com today. When you pick the hat or shirt you love, use the code PTFS at checkout for free shipping on all of your order. So shout out to them. Let's move it down the line. Let's talk Kent State. We saw the comment come in from our boy Young. You made it just in time to break down the Golden Flashes in 2025. And you want to talk fun teams to research. I wouldn't call this fun, but more of like a mental funeral as a college football fan and just where this program is at. 0-12 last year, 0-8 in the MAC. You fire your coach in March of 2025, and you hire an intern from within. And Mark Carney, he's your former offensive coordinator. Good. They kept somebody that went 0-12 in the room. He gets hired in April as the interim coach. Fellas, that's a couple months ago. Guys and gals, it is June when we're previewing this team. He just got in the room. He probably hasn't even set up his office yet completely. They promoted within the entire way out, though. I will say that. Offensive coordinator, co-offensive coordinator Clay Patterson, and then the defensive coordinator Cody Morgan. He returns as DC, so he stays around. Good news? I don't know. On the offense, I guess let's give you some positive side of things. And my two positives: you return your quarterback. He comes back from injury. He got injured week 4 against Penn State last year. Pretty common when you schedule murderers row like they went through last year. But I think this offense, one thing to note, one name to note, one thing that I'm a little bit excited about for the Golden Flashes, a very positive sign, is you bring in Minnesota transfer Devin Newman. It's a guy JP and I know, being Big Ten fans. Like, it's a viable back. He's got some talent, and he comes into Kent State. I think that they're going to run the football a lot. One, because Cardman got hurt last year, but Newman's a good back. I mean, he's got some decent experience for at least this spot. I'm interested to see how the offense operates as a whole. They saw success last year throwing the football downfield. I think they averaged 14.5 yards a catch. Granted, they weren't happening often. You lost 12 straight games, but they have some young talent that the coaches are excited about on the outside. And with a returning quarterback, if you can get the ball to him downfield, maybe you can make some things happen. The offensive line gets a complete overall. And as I'll probably reference a ton of times talking about this team, is that a bad thing? Probably not. I mean, the good news, if you're a Kent State fan on the offense and defense side of the ball, is could you get any worse? I mean, you can't lose 13. You can't lose it. You just can't do it. So I think that's the best way I can put it. I get my other positive is I love your helmets. Love when you transferred over to the lightning bolt on the helmet. Good brand. But that's about all I can say. On the defense side of the ball, very similar story. The group returns 2 starters, and they struggled to say the least last year. Gave up a ton of points. And as expected, the portal was more heavy for them rather than recruiting. That's what happens when you bring in a head coach in April. But it's with limited backing in this program, it's really hard to be like, yeah, it's stunning. Like, it feels like this program's at rock bottom and there's not much they can do. They have a lot of inexperienced guys. So if they can retain them and they don't jump ship after another, what looks to be a rough year, then maybe this program can start taking step forwards. But this feels like rock bottom. I guess if I had to note one name on the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to safety Tevin Tucker. 65 tackles in only 8 games last season, which is really impressive mark. Could be the nail polish on a rough looking team and season for this year. Overall, I like Golden Flash Nation. I think that if you're still around, you're a good human being. The grass literally can't get any darker. It's dead as can be. But the entire program feels like a mess. And I will say I want to talk about the athletic director over at Kent State. I think he's got it out. Like, I understand you need some money to make a program happen, but I don't think he wants the program to succeed. Whoever it was making these non-con schedules for this team just doesn't like the football players. It didn't like the coach at the time, because you start the year at Merrimack, against Merrimack. Then you go on the road to Lubbock and play Texas Tech. Then you get a team that's picked towards the top of the conference in Buffalo, week 3. Oh, and then after that one, you got a tough conference game, got to be ready to go. Why don't you head on the road to Tallahassee, play Florida State? And then the week after, screw it, head on to Norman, play in the SEC, play against Oklahoma. Good Lord, collect your checks, use them to build this program, because God, oh God, it needs all the help it can get. Kent State's looking rough once again. Sorry, Golden Flash Nation, but that is as real as I can be. Jake, your thoughts on this team and any positive notes you can come up with. I feel terrible ripping on the team, but there's no positive notes.
Way to instill some hope
I'm sorry.
The Kent State fan base.
Do my best.
I will say that Sean Lewis got a job, another head coaching job in the FBS ranks for just 2 7-win seasons at Kent State. Like, that's how hard this job is. One of my core memories of last year was just live betting the Tennessee game at like when Kent State
minus
was like
68.5.
No, they were like plus 79.5 or something like that. I'm like, there's no way they're just gonna run out the clock. There's no way. And they didn't. It was awesome. So shout out to Golden Flashes. You're good for something. Guys, we are blessed. We are blessed this year with UMass versus Kent State.
Oh,
Be
yes.
grateful. We're blessed with it because after that Norman stretch, they got UMass at home. So you got to get off the mat for your one and only chance to probably play the second worst team in college football. Like
Merrimack and UMass. Like that's your in, man. You got to get those two to get to 2.
I'm gonna throw this out there, and I'm probably gonna get killed for it, but I have to. Why does whoever takes over this team, why don't you just go to the triple option like a service academy? Like, why
slow
don't
down
you
the game?
That?
Just
Why
army
don't you
the time of possession. Yeah.
I mean,
it sure is.
I mean,
these numbers last
Army
year.
right now.
These numbers last year for their defense. I'm getting stressed.
It's a suggestion. I don't know. It can't get worse.
Yeah, I feel so sorry. And if you're a Kent State fan and you're listening to this, we're not that hard on like teams. Like, we'll still talk Kent State, I'm sure, at some point throughout the season. But good God, it's not looking good, man. Like, stay away from the alcohol the best you can. That's my best advice. JP, any thoughts on the Golden Flashes quickly? No. Okay.
Thanks for the kind words, JP.
I don't know. Like, you guys, I mean, you said everything here. Like, it just they cash their checks, and what they get, what they get.
My mom
probably school situations where they don't have the money to invest in it, just trying to keep things afloat.
If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all, Jordan.
That's good advice. I probably should have done that for the entire preview. I feel terrible, but hit the subscribe button, Kent State fans. We'll maybe talk positive when they win week 1 against Merrimack.
At least we're talking about you.
Yeah, exactly. No one else is. I promise you that. All right, that is Kent State. Let's move it on to the last team. Let's cover the Minutemen. We have not talked about it. The new addition into the MAC conference. Jake gets to do it. Jake, take us through them.
Yeah, saving the best 2 for last with UMass and Kent
State.
Yeah,
we did not honor that statement. Saving the best for last was not a part of this show.
Let's touch on the Minutemen pretty quickly here. 2018 FCS Coach of the Year at Maine, Joe Harris-Mayick, comes in to UMass to try and I don't like the Kent State situation. Since joining the FBS, the days have not been light for the Minutemen. They're just trying to get to 5 wins, and let alone 6. I don't think UMass has had a 5-win season since joining in 2012. He brings over Yale transfer Grant Jordan to probably get the starting quarterback job. Maybe Brandon Rose, the former Utah quarterback who saw some time there because he's coming over with his offensive coordinator. But we'll see. He's been out all spring with a foot injury, so it might be Jordan for me, the Yale transfer. Running the football is going to be super important for him. And it's going to start with UTSA running back Rocco Griffin. He's got to lead this team with a bunch of carries. He's got to be the workhorse. They bring in Colorado transfer Brandon Hood to maybe take some of those second carries as well. But it is going to rely on the run game. But kind of the theme of it, are you going to block? Does it really matter? We're going to have to wait and see. I want to get this name right because I think people are pretty excited about him. Tight end transfer from Rutgers, Matthew Aguni, is a big get for them. He was a decent recruit out of high school, and it's a position on the team that just really lacks talent right now. The wide receiver room brings back production, but I think they're going to rely on the Rutgers transfer at tight end to try and spark something with this offense. This team, surprisingly, had some good talent that transferred out. Like the defensive ends last year were good for them, and they lost them both to Power 4 schools. No surprise there. But they get a Jackson State transfer and Joshua Nobles, who I think could take that step. I think they're really excited about him. I think he can be just as productive as those other guys were. The defense loses their top 2 tacklers from a year ago. It's just kind of one of the many reasons why they rank 135th in returning production in college football. And if you didn't know, there's 136. And we just mentioned number
Not
136 before this. So like I mentioned before, we can break down the schedule if we really want to get to it. But at Kent State's on the schedule, at Akron's on the schedule. You get Bryan at home, you get Temple at home. You got to take some positives. And if you're going to try to get to 5 wins, you've got to win those 4 games. You have to. And then, if I had to pull another one out there, if Western Michigan doesn't get things going, you get them at home. Like that might be your one shot at 5 wins right there.
I'm going to retract. I made a discovery while you were talking about the second worst team in college football. I said Devin Newbin. I apologize. It's Jordan Newbin. I gave you your one bright spot, and I messed up the name. I'm still in my sorrows for Kent State.
You'll probably hear about it on Twitter.
I will. Don't post that clip. Cut this part and put it in the middle of that, please. So I apologize to Kent State Nation. But UMass sucks too. JP, your thoughts?
I mean, the hire is obviously to build something from the ground up, like full program builder for the ground up.
Young guy.
You have to do it. You might as well, if you're going to reset a program, let's do it in a new conference with a new coach.
Hard reset.
Go that direction. Yeah.
Yep. All right. I like that. That is the entire MAC conference. We went through team by team. So if you disagree with any of our takes and you're rewatching this and you fast forward to the end to see our conference title predictions, which are happening right now, drop a comment. Let us know what you disagree with, what we got wrong. We're working on it. We appreciate you being here. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We will cover your team throughout the season. And I'm making a note right now. That Kent State UMass game, I don't care if they're both 0-4. We're covering it. We're previewing that game. We are doing that as a show because that's who we are as human beings, and they need us. All right, let's go conference title game. Let's talk the dead opposite of those two programs. Who's going to be in the MAC title game come December? Let's talk Detroit. Jake, who you got there?
Give me the 2 teams that have obviously their coach back and good quarterback play. I got Toledo and Miami of Ohio. I went dark horse last year with Bowling Green, but I don't see it in this conference this year. I do not see a dark horse. I think there's a giant gap between the top 4 or 5 teams in the rest of the league. And I think those 2 teams are going to be really, really good. So give me Toledo and Miami of Ohio. They play each other this year. So DeQuan Finn might see his former team twice.
Yeah, Toledo feels like the consistent name here that you see throughout all the channels and platforms out there, but it kind of mixes up the rest of the way. And I kind of have a mix too. I'm not going Miami of Ohio, but I got Toledo and Ohio. I think what JP said earlier after my Ohio preview, like the promoting within has worked for him once. And like that system's going to stay intact. Navarro's still there. They've replaced good quarterbacks before. They've done a complete overhaul before and then won their first title since 68. Can they go back-to-back? I don't know. Can Toledo finally answer the bell? I don't know. But I think those are the 2 teams we're going to find playing come that time of the year. JP, your picks for the conference title game?
Toledo and Ohio as well. I
Nice.
think the schedule lines up for Ohio.
Lone Ranger.
Yeah, I think you get the good schedule with Ohio. You already know what's going on program-wise and what their identity is. I think they feel like they're kind of, not set aside, but like there's a little bit like, hey, we can do this without Albin kind of thing. Like, obviously, they love Tim Albin and everything. And then put on top of that, I think Toledo's the best team in the conference.
Yeah. All right. There it is. There's a conference title game. Let's flip it to the last point of the episode. If you have them, bold takes for the conference. JP, you got one?
Yeah, I do, actually.
Give it to us.
I'm kind of proud of this one because it took me a second. It was like an organic find here. So I think the MAC has a real shot here to be one of the better G5 conferences quarterback-wise.
Wow.
I do.
You don't say that often.
Here's what I'll say. The top of the conference here, DeQuan Finn, DeQuan Roberson, if they hit, Navarro, Gleason. Okay, there's your 4 that I'm like, hey, I think those are going to all hit. They'll all be really good MAC quarterbacks. Now, could break out and maybe show some noise here. Drew Pine, Holst at NIU, Labus at Central, and then Finley at Akron. Those aren't bad quarterbacks at all. And if they are above average MAC quarterbacks, that is a really good, almost top to bottom within the conference quarterback-wise.
Jake, your thoughts on that? And if you have a bold take.
It is a bold take. It concerns me a lot because I think a lot of these quarterbacks would rather run the football than throw the football. It's kind of what I'm looking at. Which
it's fine.
My concern there kind of lies within the same, like you talked about it, Jake, the offensive line overhauls that majority of these programs have, like keeping them upright's a big thing too.
Makes a difference.
Absolutely. Jake, your bold take if you've got one. Don't force it.
No, I don't force it. I'll just go back to what I said. I legitimately think Toledo has the roster to be the best G5 team in the country. I don't know if they'll do it, but I think that the talent is there.
Yeah. What if Toledo runs the table and loses to Ohio or Miami of Ohio in the MAC title game? Should they still get in?
No, not if just one G5. Like that G5 spot, you got to win your conference title. It's got to be you got to have probably less than 2 losses. It's got to be pretty scarce. But you never know. I don't think we're going to have a Boise like we did last year either. So,
yeah, no. For college football, it feels like it's in a weird spot with the G5 right now. But we'll preview them all. That's it. That's the MAC conference for 2025. Our takes on it. Let us know in the comments what you think, what we need to change. We appreciate you being here. That is the full show for tonight. We will be back next week. Gentlemen, who's on the schedule next week? Remind the folks.
The belt.
The belt, baby. Let's talk the fun belt next week. Date pending. We will get back to you on that. We appreciate you being here. We love you. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. Shop No Rivals. We'll see you next time. Jake, take it away.
Play it.